What's up, everybody? Legendary Talks, episode 76. We have the amazing Sade Lythcott tonight. I'm very excited to chat with her. I'm not 100% sure she knows how to do an IG Live, so we'll figure it out. Hey, Claudine. Hey, Frank. Hey, Sydney. The crew is here. My loyal fans, thank you all for all your support. You know, I love it and appreciate it. How's everyone feeling today? What are you guys drinking? I have Belvedere and soda, my new favorite drink. Is anybody drinking? And if so, what are they drinking? Henry, ooh, we got lots of legends in the building. Sydney, Claudine, Frank, anybody drinking? What are you guys drinking? Yes. So Sade is a really interesting girl. I can't wait to talk to her. She just texted me. She doesn't see me. Yeah, she's an old friend and just a really interesting, rich New York life. She just joined, I see. Sade, do you want me to request you, or do you want? Do you know how to request? What do you guys think of my outfit? Kind of had an idea of what I was going to wear last minute, you know. She's joining now. Great. Sade Lythcott, legendary. Hi, Boo.
Hi.
How you feeling?
I'm just loving that you keep popping all these guys' cherries on Insta Live. Is it like literally understand how old your friends are when they're just like, how do we do this?
Listen, and guess what? Everyone figures it out in the end. This is my 76th episode tonight.
Oh, I love being number 76. Maybe, you know, like.
Can you talk a little louder? It's a little, like you're a little quiet.
Oh, okay. Well.
Just, yeah, come closer and project more. So how are you feeling, first of all?
You know, I'm making it. It's fucking wild out here, and a lot on the plate, as I think a lot of people have. But day by day.
You're looking good.
So, I haven't left New York City during COVID. I don't know if that's like. I know a lot of people are like going upstate or going out east, but like I've been in Harlem for 5.
Good. Well, it's interesting because I miss Harlem big time. I miss just a certain Harlem something. You know, I definitely miss that. We have a lot of our friends are on here. Frank, Nelly, Henry. You know, a lot of the crew is on here watching. So I think Shin may be joining from Japan. You know, so he's joined a couple. So, but you know, as you've seen these, and what we do here is we celebrate people that have been important to culture, but kind of, you know, specifically to the New York culture of the 80s, 90s, 2000s, that kind of thing that really shaped New York in a lot of ways. So, you know, and I thought that you'd be a great person to chat with about those different things. So first, I want to ask you to describe yourself, either who you are or what you do. Either you can answer either one. I can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Really? Okay. I'll come close. I feel like that's a lot of me.
That's all right. You look good.
I could turn off my air conditioner.
That may be it. Yes. Let's do that. Love that painting in the background. That's amazing.
Thank you. It's a Yoruba painting. It's all beads, so all that work is bead work.
Oh, amazing.
Sade Damon, who is like the godmother of Yoruba Nigerian art. She's my godmother, and that's one of the pieces we got at her gallery at
Amazing.
one of the trips. So I'm Sade. Describe myself, native New Yorker. When people ask me where I'm from, say I'm an island girl. Everyone thinks it's like the Caribbean, like my island. You never really left the island. And now I'm the CEO of the National Black Theater, which is the oldest Black theater in New York City, and it is in Harlem.
Amazing. So you're born and raised in Harlem, correct?
Yes.
So, you know, when I first moved to New York, My first apartment was in the 90s. My first apartment was on 28th and Broadway. And, you know, I thought it was so cool living in the city. But I went to Harlem basically as soon as I got to New York. And I felt it resonated with me so much. I've always loved Harlem from the moment I went there, you mean? And I have lots of friends that were born and raised in Harlem. And I always wondered what that must have been like, because it's so rich in culture and style and all these, like, you know, impeccable style I think Harlem has in general across the board. So what was it like? What do you think, like, one of the main influences growing up in Harlem as a child that you kind of still is with you to this day?
Well, a couple of things. One, I am the child of two artists. So an artist in Harlem was a special kind of swag. There was a freedom to expressing myself however I felt like I wanted to express myself. And that was kind of echoed and mirrored and reflected off of all the textures of Harlem. Um, there's this Nikki Giovanni poem called Nikki Rosa, and Nikki Giovanni is about growing up in the ghettos that she grew up in. And the last line says something about, you know, and I hope no white person ever asked me about how hard my life is, because they'll never understand that, like, the ghetto is Black love and Black love is my existence. And so I remember I've always had a diverse group of friends, and my friends who lived downtown or, you know, were not Black, they were always scared of Harlem. And I was just like, this is a mecca. So for me, Harlem was always like swag and style. And even when it was rough and tumble, those rough and tumble people on the corner had your back. And I was always baby girl or little sis. And then when I got curved, I became shorty, which said the wrong way sounds like Sade. And I would always turn around and I was like, oh Lord, now I got to deal with this, right? So for me, like, Harlem was about sound and beat and rhythm. And it was about, you know, when we couldn't afford summer's there was always a fire hydrant. I laugh sometimes because I talk to my friends that are from here and I'm like, yo, you remember, like, there was not a winter where a trash can wasn't on fire, right? And the idea that anything would be on fire in New York for more than 30 seconds without helicopters is wild. But so, I don't know, Harlem was this just magic space for me that never felt like anything but love and home and hip hop beat rhythm. So yeah, I mean, that was growing up, and I'm telling you, this is like through crack, through the AIDS epidemic, through heroin, through gentrification. There's just a soul and a village like vibe to Harlem.
No, I agree with you. You know, I agree with you so much, and I've always said this too. Like, you know, since I moved to Harlem, I always said, if there's anything going on, whether it be 9/11 or, you know, the blackout, just get to Harlem and you're safe. As soon as you're in Harlem, you're safe. There's something about Harlem that is very safe. I've always thought that. So, and you're just a little quiet still. So if you can come a little closer or something, but we can hear you, but it's just a little quiet. So I just want to make
You know what it is?
You're spitting some gems. So I want to make sure people can hear that. You know, so.
Yeah, I wonder. I think it's this thing that's holding my phone is where the speaker is. Is that better?
I think so. Yeah.
All right. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, that's better.
I'll figure it out.
So, okay, so what's the first song you ever remember in life really connecting with?
What song?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I don't remember. I'll tell you my first concert, because my first concert was dope.
Okay.
My first concert was Michael Jackson, Off the Wall.
Oh my God, no way.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah,
I'm so jealous.
in Washington, D.C. So
Oh my
my
God.
stepmother worked for CBS Records, and she worked for a record exec named LeBaron Taylor. And LeBaron ran special events for Black music, which was a department at one time. And so her job was to throw parties after concert parties, events, all this kind of stuff. So I grew up on my dad's side backstage of all of these concerts. And so yeah, my first concert was Michael Jackson, Off the Wall. My 13th birthday was backstage at Madonna Blonde Ambition because Technotronics opened it, and Technotronics was on CBS Records. And
I'm jealous of all of this. I'm jealous of all of this. Like if you say Prince, I'm gonna slap you. I mean, I'm like,
oh, I have good Prince stories. And then, but wait, the best part of my 13th birthday, completely like New Yorker story. So Madonna's after party was in the meat packing. I wish I remembered, and that's the other thing. You'll know that like my memory isn't great. So I was like nervous about this. But so it was at some corner dive bar in the meatpacking district, which was all tranny hookers and meatpacking. And my dad was like, we're going to this concert for your 13th birthday, bring your girlfriend. So we all got dressed up. We're like 12 through 14, right? And we roll up to this bar, and I knew we were fresh. It was like me, Misha, Kasara, and we roll up to this bar, and the bouncer wouldn't let us in, and I was legit like, "Why won't you let us in?"
it's like because you're in 8th grade. He's like,
You're in 8th grade.
yeah.
So my dad went in, and whatever he saw, he was like, "Yeah. Maybe we should go get a drink somewhere."
Go get some ice cream. Go get some ice cream. He's
No,
like,
I used to hang out in bars. Like New York wasn't a place that cared. Like I'd have a Shirley Temple or a Roy Rogers
yeah,
at the bar. So
yeah.
anyway, we leave and we're in the car and we're driving slowly. And I remember some ladies coming up to the car because we were driving so slowly. And my dad was like, "This is New York." And I would be like, "Who are these girls?" And my dad were like, "These girls are guys. And this is New York." And I just remember being like 13, being like, "This is the city I live in." But meanwhile, all my friends went back and told their parents about like, and then we were in the meat packing and these women kept coming up to the cars, and it was really funny. But yeah, that was 13.
That's hilarious. Okay, so basically your first concert, Michael Jackson. What was so seeing Off the Wall? What like did it blow your mind, or what do you vividly remember from that moment about the Michael Jackson concert? And how old were you?
Oh gosh, I was 5.
Okay, so maybe not a lot. Maybe you don't remember
Or maybe 7, something like that. It was not Thriller. I remember like it was before Thriller, so Off the Wall. And
yeah,
yeah, I thought it was cool. I remember going back to another Michael Jackson concert for the Bad tour, and I was embarrassed to go. I was just like, "Oh my God, Michael Jackson is so like over. I can't believe
yeah.
I have to go to a Michael Jackson concert." And then, of course, if you've ever seen Michael Jackson live, it takes 30 seconds and you're screaming like a teenager. Like all my cool points went out the window. But yeah, no, Michael Jackson was always cool. I was a person who was never starstruck, but every time I met Michael Jackson, I felt myself shaking.
Yeah.
That kind of like energy I had and the show had.
What's the first kind of style moment that you remember, whether it be like, mahogany or something? What's the moment that kind of like vividly sticks out in your head as a young person and, those ages, 6, 10 years old?
So it's kind of like, it's cheesy, but The Last Dragon was everything for me.
Yes, of course. That's not cheesy. That's amazing. Wow, that movie is one of the best style movies of the 80s. Totally.
So Last Dragon, but what I was going to say is embarrassing is like all the beach streets, like Beach Street.
Oh, yeah. No, they're all amazing. Listen, I'm just like Beach Street right now. I'm like, hello, I'm like.
And then the first kind of style moment that took my breath away was Lady
Sings. Was what?
Lady Sings the Blues and Mahogany.
Yeah.
Like Diana Ross, everything.
No, Mahogany is like one of the best style moments in history, in my opinion. But, well, the movie is basically all style, the whole thing. So, and then another question I like to ask people, specifically like 80s related, where were you getting your information from? Was it like, was it Essence? Was it different magazines? Was it Vogue? Was it MTV? Where do you think you really were getting your inspirational information from during that time?
To be honest, it was street style. My first gig I ever got, I think I was like 14, and I was hanging out in Washington Square Park. And these people scouted me and to be a trend forecaster. They really liked my style, and my style was like a mix of going through my mother's like wardrobe at the theater and putting things together. I remember as a kid, like everyone was so talented in my community of artists, but I couldn't sing. I didn't think I could dance at the time. Not like the kids were dancing. I was a ballerina in modern dance. Uh, and all I could do was put things together, and like that's how I expressed myself. So at 14, a scout from Levi's found me in the park, and they were like, I started trend forecasting for them for a while. And so for me, all of my inspiration was like kids on the street. It was all the different worlds that I was in and the way I synthesized things. But I don't think I ever read a lot of magazines or watched a lot of television. I listened to a lot of music.
Yeah.
And because my parents were so much older and I had an older brother, I also liked old music, and I was always around like old chic artists, and so I pulled a lot from them.
Yeah, welcome to New York, a trend forecaster at 14 years old. Welcome to New York City, right? I'm like, what is the first club you went to? Like the first real Manhattan club you went to? Like for real, on your own, not with your family, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I know I went to things before, but the moment that I felt like I had arrived was Nell's, and it was also, oh God, Monday night, not Giant Step. It was Soul Kitchen.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so let's say Nell's, you know, because I'm a big, you know, I remember the moment, I'm from Detroit, and I remember the moment I stepped my feet in a nightclub, that I just remember walking in and that vivid moment. What's your like, you know, what is your memory of Nell's that kind of like blew your mind away?
I mean, it was that whole period of time, to be very honest. I was really young.
Yeah.
I remember not being able to get into Nell's one night, and I again gutted, but I was probably 16. And and it was that period of weird time where like girls from Harlem always had like a pacifier or a lollipop. I don't know, like, and so for that, it was kind of like I couldn't get in. Anyway, the thing about all of these parties, because it was Nell's, that was like one of my earliest memories, but also like Palladium. And what was the club in Times Square with the slide?
USA.
USA. All of those, I would say, have the same kind of influences, which was like you were literally able to rub elbows with like everyone from like the roundaway girl that you knew from the block to like Tupac. And
Yep.
it was it in a weird way, it was like completely democratic, even though there were VIPs and VVIPs, but there was something about the dance floor. And I know it's not even close to what Studio 54 was, but New York used to be for bottle service and tables. It used to be everybody came to dance. And so everybody met on the dance floor. And that's what I remember about Nell's and those other places.
Amazing. No, yeah, I remember the same. And you keep saying that, you know, you were really young, because my first job was at the Limelight, and I worked there when I was 18 as a guest list person. But there was definitely 13, 14-year-olds coming there left and right. It was no big deal.
Yeah,
you know, I'm like,
yeah.
I wasn't even old enough to be working there legally, and then people were coming in that were, you know, literally in ninth grade.
I had that same thing. Like I did doors for a short period of time, and I remember going to NYU and doing a door for, I think Lisa Cooper and Cordell had a night right next to Nell's. It was like a little bar, and I remember all the like little bitches in my classes trying to get in. I'd be like, can I see your ID? And they're like, you're not even old enough. And I'd be like, I'm not inside, am I? You know?
I work here. And then during that time, your first kind of nightclub phase, let's say, was there anyone that you looked up to, or anyone kind of took you under their wing, like the Lisa Coopers, the Belindas? You know, they were really instrumental, I think, in how I kind of conceptualized things a lot, both Lisa and Belinda, and the way that they did things, and the way they looked at things and the level. Is there like, you know, is there anyone that either kind of mentored you or that you looked up to?
Yeah, I think my first entree into the world, really more than a spectator, was Everton Heard.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
he,
Everton, sorry to cut you off. Everton doesn't get the credit he deserves. Everton was one of the coolest people
yeah,
and such a visionary. And then like so much things were birthed from his ideas. You mean he
yeah,
was really great.
yeah. And so he gave me my first gig. He had a party down in Soho at Match, the restaurant
Yep,
Match.
I
Um,
remember.
and that was like my first gig, and he took me under his wing.
Yep.
And that was how I met New York. And at
Yeah.
the time, Cordell was kind of doing the doors for him, but Cordell was always
Cordell.
Cordell.
Cordell's
And
Cordell.
so I think Cordell, who is just like, a force, at some point, like, just wouldn't show up or showed up late. And so I started getting Cordell's gigs. Cordell got moved to be a promoter of a lot of those nights, and then I got his door gigs. But second to Everton, it would be Lisa Cooper. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, she
The
was
Queen.
the queen. And when she and Belinda lived together, they were just like these two Black, incredibly beautiful women who, in my opinion, besides being like cultured and sophisticated and cool as fuck, they were weirdos. And as a girl who always felt weird in Harlem because I straddled so many worlds, they were like kindred souls. And legendary Crosby Street, their apartment, Lisa's apartment, became my second home. So yeah.
Yeah, no, they're really amazing. I've had both of them on here. Did you see either one or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
both.
Lisa's so Lisa still. I love it. They're both, I mean, they were both amazing. I love them.
They're
Um,
queens.
okay, so Claudine Joseph, a good friend of mine, just asked, how did we meet? I think we met at Lotus, right? Is that how we met? Or
Damon, to be very honest, I think I probably met you more, like I think I met you through Red when
got it.
Elizabeth and my brother were
Oh
together.
yeah,
Um,
yep.
and I remember you at every door that I didn't know if I could get in or whatever. So I knew you before we
Yep.
actually met, but we connected Lotus Days for sure.
Because there was a time, the time we're kind of talking about, there was a time when I was doing the door 7 nights a week, literally at all the good hip hop parties for I was doing 7 nights a week sometimes. And he was like, yeah, the Everton, the Cordell, Lisa, Belinda, Lisa, I was doing every single, Bill Spector, Tammy Ford, every single night I was doing the door. It was insane.
And by the
Around
way,
that time.
in 7 fabulous outfits every single night.
True. We're facts only. Okay, so there are some people on here that actually don't know what Lotus is. So, the amazingness that was Lotus, you and I both got to experience it very intimately, let's say. But I want you to describe Lotus to me as if I have no idea what it is. So you tell me what
Uh,
Lotus is.
oh gosh. So the meatpacking district was this like last bastion of cool hood in New York. And Lotus was one of the first kind of clubs, lounges, bars to cut its teeth there. Only second to, do you remember that little place that was open for a short period of time that Madonna's brother owned? It was called like Chinoiserie or
Yes, I do
something.
remember. That's right. And it
That,
burned down.
yeah,
Yes,
burned down. That was everything. Yes.
yes.
That was Chinoiserie, was on that same block a few doors down from where Lotus would be. And that little bubble of time was like R&B Black heaven, right? Vibe magazine used to do all their parties there. I used to do the door for all of Vibe's parties. And so I loved that block. That block felt magic to me. And when Chinoiserie burned down, it felt like this emerging energy kind of died. It came and it died. And then Lotus opened up. And I don't even know how to describe Lotus except for it is David Rabin just put his foot all the way in this chic, sexy, upscale, but like New York kind of grit. It wasn't a club like Club USA or the Palladium or, like any of the big ones. It was a lounge and it felt exclusive and it felt grown and sexy. It really was the purity of what all of these things have become. was Lotus. And Lotus on Sunday night, which was you and Frank's night, changed New York nightlife forever. And it was I think Lotus is the reason why nothing can be cool anymore, because it was so cool, and it was right before like cell phones and cell phones that had, like, you could take pictures. So everything that happened there stayed there, and it felt special. And I feel like at the end is when you could start texting your friends, like, I'm at Lotus, like, ask for this person at the door.
Yep, I remember.
Yeah. So that was, yeah, it was magic. It was magic. And then
No, it's definitely.
this gorgeous, like, 6'6" Belgian black man at the door who looked like he just stepped off of a runway, like rejecting you in like the sexiest French accent. You were like, did I get rejected? Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, no, it's a moment in time. I call it the Studio 54 of hip hop. It had something for everybody, and it was such a special, amazing moment in New York, life. And it was 7 years long, that party. It was when it ended, it was 7 years. And I always say there's something about that actual building, because you could see like every single celebrity was going there at the time. I mean, every rapper, every celebrity, and it didn't really matter. It wasn't like a VIP. It was kind of a VIP, but it wasn't a VIP situation. Like you're saying, same thing on the dance floor. No one's VIP. Everyone's there for the same reason. And it was like, I remember Frank and I talking and being like, I think it's gonna be slow tonight. And then, everybody and their brother Prince would come with 50. It was such a special moment, and I always say it had something for everybody. And it was right before social media, like you're saying. So, it just was like, it was a safe space basically, and it was amazing.
Yeah. So the two things that I remember that really still resonate with me about Lotus on Sunday was, one, you and Frank curated a room from the perspective of family. So at the height of Lotus, where J-Lo is on the dance floor and Naomi Campbell's in a corner and Madonna is somewhere, like, y'all held down your table, and it was just us, like, people who knew each other for so long. Like, y'all never got brand new, even when the parties got brand new. And so that also made the spaces feel more special, because New York was always there, and there was a place for us there.
You're right. That's a great point. That's a really good point. Yeah, like Little Kim had to sit at my table sometimes because there was nowhere else for her to sit. They'd be like, yeah, no problem. And I remember, yeah, you're right. You're right. It was, well, Khalees used to always say, all the celebrities used to stare at our tables like, sweat our mine and Frank's table the whole night. They're like, everyone's like this. Like, they're in your guys' business all night. I see them. Yeah. That's a really interesting point. I never thought about that. Yeah.
And the other thing that I remember about Lotus, which really speaks to what Lotus was, is that on a regular basis, there would be hundreds of people in the street. The cops would have to close down 14th Street between 9th and Washington, because there were so many people in the street trying to get, like, that part was wild. And even if you knew you were on the list, you would have to find a way. Like, people would see the line and get really intimidated. And you're like, no, we just have to get to the front somehow. And, it's an elbow here, excuse me there,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. So that, and I was always so grateful that Henry was so tall, because we'd be like, we're over here,
He's agreeing. He's on here right now. He's agreeing with everything you're saying. He said, literally, you'd be on the list and be thousands of people inside. Yeah, no, it was a moment in time, and lots of my friends, literally, they said they stopped going out after Lotus, like you're saying. They just, when Lotus closed, they stopped going out, which is so funny to me. But I will say this, and I like telling this part of the story. Lotus was 7 years long. It was an amazing moment for myself and Frank Roberts both. But when it ended, people were very sad, and I was ready to move on, 100%. I was like, I wasn't happy, but I was like, 100%, like, I didn't feel sad at all. I was like, this is a moment in time. Things don't last forever. I'm ready to move on, so.
7 years is a long time for a party in New York. And I remember birthdays were so legendary, because you would do those portraits, the ones that you posted. Like, we would dress up in whatever the theme you came up with for the year. And the portraits, again, like, it could have been the sexy girl. It could have been your celebrity friend. But it was that New York crew. And that was so great. And I have to say, the reason why I think Lotus was so sad for us, it was like every Sunday you knew there was a family reunion. Like, you could be depressed, you could be tired, you could be whatever, but you knew on Sunday night you would have a space that felt safe and you felt loved and seen. I often say that Lotus on Sunday nights is like the ultimate cheers bar. Like sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name and they're
True.
always glad you came.
You're right.
But yeah. It was a
We can go on and we can go on. I can go on forever. I didn't like talking about Lotus for a couple of years. Once it ended, I'm like, leave it in the past. And that, finally now it's been I think almost 15, 20 years. It's been I think it's been almost 20 years now since it started. So like I can, but for about a good 7, 8 years, I was like, I don't want to talk about it. I'm like, let's move on.
I want to have this one Lotus moment and then we can move on if you want to. But like, so my name is Sade. Sade seems like an exotic name. I'm older than Sade, the singer's career. So I grew up thinking I had the most special name until the singer came out. And then I was like, she stole my name, which is actually a very Nigerian name. She was also on CBS Records. So went backstage as a young girl, didn't want to be backstage because this woman stole my name. And got introduced to her. She like signed a program for me because my stepmother wanted her to. Fast forward, you guys did either Sade's birthday at Lotus or an after party for Sade at Lotus. And I remember downstairs and I remember being on the dance floor and Sade and I having like this dance battle on the dance floor, which by the way, I have come to obviously adore Sade. She is the queen of all queens. And to have that moment with Sade on the dance floor, and then we started talking. I was like, I know this is a stupid story, and I kind of rolled out and told her the story I just said, and she was like, I've never forgotten you since the day that I met you. I stole your name. And I was just like, oh, like, kill me now. Like, that was Lotus. It was.
That's an amazing story, but that is very Lotus. You're right. Cassidy was on here last week, and he said he was spinning downstairs in the you're in the punishment level, and Diddy was down there one night. He's playing on the soul, and Diddy was down there dancing. At the end of the night, Diddy came to the DJ booth and said, "Who's the DJ? Where's the DJ?" He said, "I'm the DJ." And he's like, "I've never seen a white boy play soul like that. Do you want to spend my birthday next week?" So he started basically his career launch, from One Night at Lotus, dealing with Diddy. So Lotus was magical for sure. Okay, so I do want to move on. We have lots of stuff to talk about. So I do want to talk about Zoe Kravitz, obviously. So I remember, I was thinking about you today, and, I remember she was just kind of always around, and I don't think I was really processing it. We were young, we were just whatever, But you were really mentoring her for most of her life, I guess, right? Because I think I met her when she was young, Yeah. And
So
it was.
I wouldn't say I was mentoring her. This is another good nightlife Frank Roberts story. So my best friend, who we were partners in crime, and at one point we were styling together, and together, and dating. She was in a relationship with Frank, and we were trying to start our own swimwear line or start our own fashion line. She had gone to FIT. I just loved fashion anyway, and Frank was friends with this woman who was styling Lenny Kravitz.
Yeah.
And I'll keep some of the names, like I won't say all of the names. So she was friends with Frank, and Lenny was looking for a stylist. And so we were like, Jada and I had just come back from Paris looking at fabrics we couldn't afford. We were like literally sharing hot chocolates at Starbucks trying to figure out what our next gig was going to be able to pay rent. And Frank said, my friend is looking for someone to style Lenny Kravitz. Do you guys know any wardrobe stylists? And Jada and I looked at each other. We're like, we can do it. And so, long story short, we started working for Lenny.
Got it.
And Lenny at the time was living in Miami, and because he was getting ready for a world tour, he moved Jada and I down to Miami, and Zoe had just started living with him. And so we all lived in this house together, and that's how we met. And, she's been like a sister to me ever since. Shortly thereafter, Lenny moved back to New York. And Zoe moved to New York at 15, 16. And, not knowing so many people in the city, that was like a really easy connective tissue. And I remember styling her for her high school proms, her junior prom and her senior prom. And yeah, and we've just been like family ever since. But as a result, if you have parents that are on the road, she was like I was. Like I just saw so much of like I wanted to show her the New York that was my New York and Jada's
Yep.
New York. So we just always did things together. Yeah.
Yes, but it's indirect mentorship is what I'm saying. So like, the way that I saw you guys, and I think I just remember her always being there around that age, 15, 16, 17, always with you. And it seemed like your little sister that you were kind of, showing around. And, I think that must have been extremely valuable for her, upbringing. Must have been a really important part for her.
I think it's like that's the New Yorker in all of us, right? It's like mentor, like unconscious mentorship. I think for I was to her what Lisa was to me, and I always
Yep.
had to be what Lisa and Belinda were to me and Jada,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and yeah. So
Well, I was thinking about saying, I said, well, she turned out pretty good. So Lenny, Lisa, and Sade did a good job. So what are some of like the most legendary parties that you can remember coming to your mind right now? Like ever?
oh my goodness. So I don't know if people really give Beatrice that whole era of time as much credit as it should. Beatrice was really major. I mean, because it was Lotus had died,
Yep.
and after Lotus, so Lotus did something that I think also really hurt nightlife, which was for me, it was really the birth of bottle service.
Yeah.
And I get it. Like you guys had to make some distinctions and you had to make money, but and obviously it was happening in other spaces too. But bottle service to me in a lot of ways killed nightlife. And what started happening is everything started to cater to that kind of demographic of folks that could afford bottles. And it like a lot of New York lost its edge. So for me, Beatrice was that edge again, that like dirty living room where everybody and their grandmother was in Paul Sevigny's back room dancing and sweating together. And I think that one legendary night there was a night that Prince pulled up in a limousine and he, got out, was on the dance floor. And yeah, and like for that week, he was really pursuant of Zoe as like thought she was such like an important style and music like energy. And I remember being on the dance floor, and this was like the sixth day of hanging out with Prince in a row. But he was like, if you know Prince, he's kind of cheeky and has a sense of humor about him. So we're on the dance floor dancing together, and he taps me on the shoulder, and he goes, "Hi." I go, "Hi." He goes, "How are you?" I'm like, "I'm fine." But it's like the sixth day, and he goes, "Where you from?" And I go, "I'm from Harlem." And kid you not, Damon, he goes, "I'm from the 80s," and does a spin. And I was like, oh my God, Prince is everything. We knew he was everything, but he said he was from the 80s.
He's like, I guess that's I love that story.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, Prince loved to go out. Does Prince love to go out? So
Yeah.
that's an amazing story. Who have you met that you, like you said, you kind of started shaking when you met
Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson, sorry. Who, besides Michael, who did you meet that you were like gagged over? You're like, oh my gosh, you mean? Besides Michael.
Oh, that's a really good question.
Like for me, I met Tupac and David Bowie when I was younger, around the same time, and both kind of blew me away. And I wasn't, especially David Bowie, I wasn't expecting to. I was really blown away by him for some reason. And Tupac, the brilliance that he was, it was so apparent when you talked to him. So those two of mine, let's say. But
Yeah. Yeah, those people never like are like incredible people, and I've met them. I think I had two, and they're kind of off the cuff. One is Old Dirty Bastard. So ODB was a crooner. I met ODB. Where did I meet ODB? I think doing the door or being at Palladium, and I was a freshman. My freshman dorm at NYU poppin'. It was always Mark Echo, ODB, Tyson Beckford, the model, and Most Def and Talib Kweli. Like they would always just like hang out in my dorm. But ODB took a liking to me, and he was like, I'm Osiris and you are something. And he would leave me these crooning, singing soul messages on my voicemail. And he would just pop up and he would get me out of class or be like, when you're done with class, and we would just walk the village together. And it was just not the person that people knew to be ODB, which is why I feel like it's a big impression.
Yeah.
And then the other one, so I was dating for a very short time, Albie, back in the day, who was a record exec for Tommy Boy Records. And he lived in the West Village. And he had this small, beautiful daughter. And I was babysitting one night while he was like working and was coming home. But his next door neighbor was Grace Jones, and I didn't know it. And he had one of those buildings where the elevator comes up to the floor and it's only two apartments on the floor. And I remember going to get delivered and then I got locked out of the apartment. So I was like knocked on the door to be like, because Albie was always like, if you get locked out, go to my neighbor's and, you know, she has keys or like she'll call me or whatever. And I remember knocking on the door and Grace Jones answering and like, Alsacia, come in, like, and just waiting for Albie in Grace Jones' apartment. That was pretty cool.
That's an amazing story. Listen, you had some good stories, girl. Okay, so I obviously want to talk about the National Black Theater. So I remember when you started, you know, kind of, and you are the CEO, correct?
Yeah.
And it was supposed to be a temporary thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, I remember you kind of graciously stepped into that role. And what was it like going from basically, you know, for lack of better words, party girl to CEO of this, like, this amazingly important, you know, place? I mean, like, how was that transition for you? Because it seemed like you just stepped right into the role, like, didn't skip a beat. So what was that first, like, experience like for you, that first year or whatever? So.
Well, it's a complicated question because I stepped into the role because my mother founded it and then she passed away. And
Yeah.
so it was like a temporary thing to find a new CEO after my mom passed. I was supposed to be there for 6 months. I've been there for 12 years. So I think the first, you know, good chunk of it was like laden with grief and it felt like something I didn't choose.
Yeah.
And so it's weird to tell these stories because it feels name droppy, but I know that like
It doesn't matter. We're friends.
yeah,
It's
and also
fun.
people who follow you for like I feel like you are an educator, you know. And so anyway, one of my mom's closest girlfriends was Maya Angelou, and so Auntie Maya wrote a eulogy for my mom's funeral. And I remember it being read. She couldn't come up because she wasn't well at the time. And it was like this ultimate poem by Maya Angelou to my mother that was just like, Barbara Ann Teer has gone. No one should try to fill her shoes. Basically, like, retire the jersey. If you try, you will fail. So I think the first chunk of my existence at National Black Theater, I definitely had like imposter syndrome. And it wasn't until Maya passed away that I revisited those words, which was like, I would say 4 years later, 5 years later. And really, I realized what Maya was giving me a gift that was an invitation for me to say, I can't fill her shoes, but what can I bring to the theater? And it was the permission to like create a pathway for what my gifts are for the theater. And I think from that point on, and then hiring my artistic director, Jonathan McCrory, I think from that point on, I really found my voice. I found my space. I found something that felt real and authentic. And so the theater is a place that was built by my mom to be a temple for Black liberation. And that liberation and human transformation thing really was my life. And a lot of the party girl aspects of why I love New York and why I was out all the time, I could bring to the theater because, you know, the thing about like Bungalow 8 and Lotus and Beatrice and Nell's, all of those places felt like home. It felt like they felt like homes for the weirdos. You didn't have to be rich. You didn't have to be like surgeried out. You didn't have to be anything but real and authentic and have something to offer, to bring.
Yeah.
And so I kind of, in a weird way, wanted to create that for Black artists in Harlem, with the same idea of like, what would a home away from home be for these brilliant Black voices? And so MBT is like such a labor of love and has kept me in Harlem. And yeah.
First of all, that whole story that you just said is a beautiful story. The whole like thing, and, you know, the fact that you took your years of cultural navigation in New York City and brought it to the theater, and the authenticity that you know, resonate with, and all that. That whole story is beautiful. So kudos to you. I really, you know, respect you stepping into that role and then really making it your own. And you know, you've just done really amazing with it, and it's such an important thing, obviously, and it is now living on and on. You know, I pass it all the time. You know, it's 125th and 5th. I pass it all the time. You know, like I'm always like, hey, boo. I've been there a million times.
Yeah.
But you know, it's just a really important. And is it celebrating 50 years or something? No.
52, yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah, amazing. So congratulations, I guess, to you and everyone. But yeah, I just was like thinking about saying like that must have been such an interesting, you know, thing. But you know, I was saying going from party girl to that. But you said you basically seems almost like a natural progression, right?
Yeah, because those first cool parties that you were talking about, like those were in my living room, right? Or those were in like the aunties' living rooms, because those were like the Jimmy Baldwins and the Nina Simones and the like shops, like all of those people were kids at the same time, like Betty Shabazz, like they're all like real aunties and uncles. And so, and no one partied better than them, you know, and no one was more sophisticated than them. So kind of New York, the way I discovered New York was very analogous to the way I discovered life and how I was raised.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what do you think, what did you learn about yourself, I guess, along the process? And what is like one of the major lessons, I guess, you've learned in this whole process of, you know, being the CEO?
You can't take for granted how everyone deserves to feel seen, to feel safe and sacred. And that the thing that's beautiful about life and soul in the ephemeral ways that it is beautiful is that people feel reflected back. I think the reason why music is so powerful when it's powerful is because people can see themselves in either the lyrics or the beat. And so what I've learned, you know, my mother would always say the science and secret of soul. What I've learned is that, you know, to be an artist, to be a steward of space is to be of service to that magic. And I'm so grateful for all of the people who saw that magic in me when I didn't see it and helped to nurture it in me. And so the fact that I get to wake up every day and do that for other brilliant artists is such like the pleasure of my life. And I really like, I can't, you know, the thing that people maybe don't understand about like you or Frank or Henry or Lisa is like, we may not speak for 20 years, and the second we see each other, it's a homecoming. And you can't know how great that feels. You know, whether you know it or not, you feel that like people are rooting for you, even if you haven't seen them. And so, I don't know, I just feel like being raised in that environment has informed so much of what I want to, how I want to serve and what I want to offer the people who come to NBT. It's a resilience around empathy. It's a resilience around grace and kindness and generosity and soul, you know? So yeah, I guess that's it.
That's amazing, Sade. I mean, you know, that's also a gorgeous response to that question I asked. That's beautiful. Good for you. I'm really happy for you. Like you're saying, I'm rooting for you. I do think this too, just to touch on what you were saying earlier, you know, I think I realized this not too long ago. It's not me. I'm a vessel. You know, like I'm a vessel to, like you're saying, educate and to like, for creativity to fly through me to other people. It's not me. It's not me. I don't think I knew that for a while. I literally feel as a vessel, you mean? So, and you know, we're not going to go there. I'm going to move on. So I want to talk about Harlem.
You are. Huh? And your oldest and dearest friends are your oldest and dearest friends. And I think
You're
that's
right.
the thing about like you know, your moniker is the Legendary Damon, and there's nothing that you haven't seen, but you are the same person that I met 20 years ago or 20 plus years ago that you are today. And that's not easy in the world that you navigate.
I mean, it was a very conscious effort on my part to, well, I'm from Detroit. I think that's a lot to do with it. I've always said that. Detroit is authentic, Detroit is real, and Detroit don't play. So I never want to lose that part of my personality, but I made a conscious choice to be as normal as possible within this crazy world that I work in, you know, so.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
moment of nightlife that was such a short blip that was huge, and I should just say it, was Life, the VIP room of Life that Mark Ronson spun.
and Eric LePeau, yep.
And Eric LePeau. Then Tip and Q-Tip and Mark Ronson started a party like
Table 50.
Yeah, Table 50. We started it all together. They wanted me to do the door, and then they would take turns DJing, but we all kind of, it was our party. That was a blip, but that was really great. And I will say, as I'm just like running things off, my first real intimidating gig at the door were Tuesday nights at Spy, which were Russell Simmons night. And the only thing more intimidating than that door was my first gig, which was at Frank Roberts' annual barbecue at his apartment in Brooklyn, where Mark Ronson would spin, and I had like a crazy like that I remember those parties being like the hardest for me and the coolest.
So funny. Listen, you just ran off. Those are 4 good parties right there. Okay, we only have 5 minutes left, and I want to ask you a couple more questions quickly. So, what are your thoughts on, you know, you're born and raised in Harlem. What are your thoughts kind of on, let's call it the new Harlem. I moved to Harlem in 2001, so I've been there almost 20 years. So I got the tail end of the old Harlem, and I always say I like the old Harlem and the new Harlem. It's just more, it's convenient. There's a Starbucks in the corner kind of thing. So, but, you know, what do you really feel of, I guess, the new Harlem?
So it's a complicated question. I often say that, you know, the challenge with talking about these things is people use the same language, but it means different things. So, you know, the new Harlem, the parts of new Harlem that feel exciting are the parts where new energy is embracing our community. The parts of new Harlem that don't feel great, that like kind of feel like gentrification, are people who move and have like superimposed Harlem as a brand as opposed to a culture, right? So there's a difference between the brand of Harlem and the culture of Harlem, and
Yep.
there's a difference between the neighborhood of Harlem and the community and the village of Harlem.
Yep.
So the community village part of it, I think, is more vibrant than it ever has been, and that feels great. It feels inspiring. It feels, but it also feels like we're being pushed to the outer edges as opposed to central to what it is that we do. I will say this kind of impending gentrification, what it has done for the cultural organizations in Harlem, I feel like has brought new urgency to us wanting to enliven our community and do things together. So like whether it's Studio Museum, the Apollo, or MBT, like we find ways to build community together. It's almost like, you know, to be this great wall of this indigenous culture to Harlem, Black culture to Harlem, and keeping that Mecca alive. So that part feels exciting. And it sucks when people move into your community and then, you know, Marcus Garvey Park, they want to change it back to Mount Morris Park. It's like, no, it's Marcus Garvey Park. And the Sunday Drummers, you know, they call the cops for noise pollution. Like that new Harlem, I don't
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
Harlem of our community growth from artistic, fashion, style, a food, a culture standpoint, I think is dope.
Yeah, no, I mean, I kind of agree with everything you're saying. You know, it's because it is a really complicated question. I agree. You know, like it's very interesting because, like I said, I kind of came in 2001. And that's like the, you know, the end of, I guess, you know, and, you know, I saw it drastically change. But, you know, again, you answered eloquently and amazingly. I don't know if you do this, but you should be public speaking. Do you use public speak often?
I sometimes.
You should. You're so good at this. I didn't really know this about you till this conversation. I think you're amazing at it. I'm serious. Okay, we have 3 minutes left. I want to ask you a couple questions. What inspires you right now? Right now in 2020, August?
My wacky ass 3-year-old son.
Amazing. First of all, you're married to Sade. I could not be more proud of you in general, but that I want to, that's a whole other conversation. Congratulations. I think you're doing awesome. What are you grateful for at this moment?
Wow. I'm grateful for culture. Like COVID's been really challenging. New York has been really challenging. I lead a daily call called Culture at 3 that brings over 300 cultural institutions together on a daily basis to share resources, to figure out and navigate how the fuck we're going to get through COVID.
Yeah.
And way ride for each other, cross boroughs. People in Staten Island have become some of my favorite folks. Like the way culture rides for each other and we'll get New York through this is wildly inspirational and
amazing.
Makes me hope.
That's amazing. Okay, wait, 1 minute left. How can we support you right now? Basically nobody's working. COVID is a crazy time. How can we either support you or your organization, or what's the way that we can support you right now?
Yeah, so National Black Theater has an IG. It's at natblacktheater. No, not dot anything. At natblacktheater. And just, follow us. The thing that's cool about National Black Theater's Instagram is very little about the work that we do, but more about the pedagogy of affirmation, about and I think that a lot of people are introduced to the work that we do on stage by our IG. So, and if you feel so compelled, we're a nonprofit theater trying to stay open. Feel free to donate, but also just join the family, join the community, see what we're doing.
I'll post all the information as well on my IG and my story and everything.
Yeah.
All right, Sade, I want to thank you so much. This was an amazing chat. I didn't know, I wasn't sure where it was going to go, and it was, it was amazing. Michael Jackson, Blonde Ambition, everything you said, it was a really great talk, and I am so proud of you. Like I said, I've seen you grow from a girl to a very strong woman. I knew you when you were, I think, a teenager, and I'm really, really proud of you. This show is about celebrating people that have been important in culture based off of everything you just said, the lengthy, rich stories you were telling. I'm just really happy to celebrate you, and I cannot express how proud I am of you. And, you really should think about sharing these, the second half of the conversation stories with people. I think they're really will be beneficial and helpful to people. So really think about that. That's my advice. So
thank you. I love you so much.
I love you. This is a great conversation.
This wasn't as painful as I thought it was going to be.
It was good. It was good.
It was great.
Thank you. I love you.
Love
Bye.
You. Bye.